The distant sound of liquid dripping down into a puddle and the subdued, sharp clatter echoed through the concrete skeleton of a long-abandoned structure. Its interior lay in such disrepair that one could only guess as to what purpose each room had once served. The walls, having been stripped bare, exposing cement and rebar beneath with scraps of both strewn across the dust-covered floors. The scarce remnants of broken, rotting furniture gave no further clue of its old purpose. Whatever it once was, it was no more. The building would give little invitation, even for the most daring of urban explorers to wander into its gloomy depths. The grime-stained windows and cracks in the ceilings gave almost no light as they had come to be covered in ivy and moss, most of the building cast in utter darkness. Its shadowy corners were only sparsely lit by scattered floodlights, though few of them were still lit. It was odd, perhaps, as they had not been touched so uncaringly by the passage of time, yet only the littlest roots and sprouts starting to stake a claim at their metal legs. But, of course, for the right sum, a bravo would walk into hell and be back in a week for his pay, and the duo standing at the entrance were no different.
Do you ever think about retiring, S?
Asked the first, flicking on the flashlight strapped to the barrel of his rifle. The man was tall, broad-shouldered and draped in urban camo, the spitting image of a bravo out of a recruitment poster, were it not for the deep green ballistic mask covering his face. In contrast, a poster boy bravo would show off his brilliant smile, a triumphant gaze in his eyes to accommodate all who would ask him for his service.
Every other payday, bud,
responded his partner. Far shorter, far less broad, and far less intimidating, dressed in a form-fitting black outfit showing off a head of ginger hair framing a face concealed in part by glowing red goggles. This man, in turn, was the type of bravo you'd see more commonly in comic books and light novels of the time. Mind you, the association didn't make his type any less legitimate, but a bit more flashy, no doubt.
But the money doesn't last forever.
It could. For anyone else.
Well, they're welcome to take my place,
S said as he stepped into the building first, armed with just a handgun. He raised it as he scanned the dark interior, as open as it was. Bud followed closely behind, covering their backs.
See anything in there?
Not much. Nah. Oh, hold on. Body, 12 feet ahead, looks intact. Moving up.
The chattering had halted, the only audible sound now being that of the pair's cautious, measured movements. In part, it was to remain silent, and in part to not trip on the scattered debris at their feet. S tapped Bud on the arm as they neared the body, bringing them to a halt.
Bullet hole through the head. Don't see a gun,
S said, peering around the room.
Great. He's hoping he just pissed off his mates. They blew his brains out and left.
Ever the optimist, aren't you?
S crouched and patted down the body, producing a PDA from the corpse's pocket and putting it into his own.
Hope that's something at least.
No cash.
No wallet. If there was, there'd be a 50-50 shot, I'd tell you.
Appreciate the honesty. Now let's keep moving.
The duo continued as carefully as before, methodically checking the occasional side room and finding little inside that hadn't been turned to mush by the march of time and urban pests. Soon, they were approaching a stairwell on the far side of the room, a dark maw of concrete steps and creaking metal rails.
Oh, these kinds of places always creep me out. Monsters and dead bodies or not. You know that feeling when it's like, it feels like there should be more here, but you've got no idea what?
No.
All right, good talk. Feel like going up?
Also no, but I reckon that's what the patron would want.
S led the way ahead, and 4 sets of stairs later, the two of them stood at the end of a hallway, something like offices on either side. The leading man was about to speak up, but then, instead, tapped Bud's shoulder 3 times as a figure emerged from one of the rooms, leaning heavily against one of the walls.
Hostile?
Just as the word passed his lips, it was drowned out by a gunshot. Darting his head back to look over his shoulder, he heard the figure drop to the ground with a thud. Granted, the lack of light made it impossible for him to make it out.
Maybe, but I'm not here to take chances. This is recon, not a rescue op, bud.
S responded, watching the body for any movements. Seeing none, he gave his partner 2 taps and approached it.
Oh, shit.
Upon seeing it so close, S pulled back. Whatever had been human about it before was gone. Its features dragged out and its orifices seeping a viscous black substance which seemed to even press out through its pores, giving its skin a wet sheen which brought out its emaciated form. S needed but a single look to know what the two had stumbled into.
Restrainers!
The chattering returned from before. Along with it, a drop of foul-smelling liquid landed on his shoulder. It took just a glance for him to jump back, pushing along a startled Bud as the chorus of hollowed faces and mangled bodies clinging to the ceiling shuffled overhead. Moments later, an amorphous stretched figure dropped down where S had been but a second ago and quickly received a bullet to its swirling head for the effort.
Run!
Bud needed no convincing, the pair dashing towards the stairs as more of the foul creatures started to drop down around them. The possessed bodies of those foolish enough to have visited this place before shuffled out from the offices, as if to see what all this racket was about. The Bravos knew not to waste time fighting their pursuers, instead focused on getting out. But a shadow lurched down, grasping onto Bud's shoulders and shooting right back up at his neck and face, clinging to his mask. The man let go of his rifle, letting it hang in the harness around his chest, his hands instead struggling against the restrainer's grip. S raised his weapon again, firing at the thick strands of black ooze which connected the assailing creature to the body above them. It hissed and reeled back up, though a putrid residue remained on Bud's mask and shirt. Taking no time to thank him, Bud rushed down the stairs, just in time, as several more of the things now lunged down, blocking S's path. Or, they would have done so if S was inclined to take the stairs. While the monsters took their swings at him, he hopped the railing headfirst and dropped down onto the step just ahead of Bud, in fact, landing on his hands. They seemed to stick briefly to the concrete surface before both he and his partner continued their escape out into that rotting half-lit foyer. S winced as he saw Bud's leg graze against a piece of rebar in the dark, but this didn't stop the man, who seemed almost unfazed, save for now hobbling more than purely running. Just before the two made it outside, S glanced back to see the creatures had gathered around the stairs and stopped, one of their puppeteered bodies raising an arm. Another shot rang out, narrowly missing the pair as they ducked around the corner. It whistled across the road and shattered the window of some rundown shop. At least S had ducked. Bud had collapsed with a pained groan and far less grace. As if stopped by something before, his leg began to bleed profusely. But this seemed to only be a secondary concern as the Bravo tore off his mask and proceeded to relinquish his lunch on the pavement. S, being much more composed, grabbed the flare gun hanging at Bud's side and fired into the air to alert their backup. This was indeed a night which made one consider retirement. There it was once more, a vivid memory of stunning lights shimmering violently across her face. They blinded her as she stepped forward, hiding from sight the ocean of judging faces before her, blending them together in a blur of smug contempt and patronizing smiles. Or so she thought. She didn't desire to stand on that stage, and yet she was expected to be there, and a young girl is always to do as is expected of her. Or so she thought. As content as she ought to have felt to have these people hidden by this impenetrable light, she could not help but focus her gaze to see into the first rows where she hoped to see the few people she cared for and who cared for her. And yet, she couldn't. They all looked the same as the rest, lost in the avalanche of spotlight beams. As she took another step, the hall fell silent. Behind her, music began to play, but the melody she'd been taught to recognize even in her sleep felt foreign to her. The harmony turned to cacophony, the notes dulled by her inner voice telling her to run, to get back, to not embarrass herself further. She knew she had missed her cue. She wanted it to be over. Then she heard a voice, forcing its way through the dinning in her ears and screaming in her soul. She couldn't make out the words, but she recognized it all the same. It was a voice which in that moment reminded her that, come the end of all of this, she wouldn't be alone. That in that moment, she wasn't alone either. The girl took a breath, parted her lips, and she woke up, staring at the plain white ceiling above. Well, not all white. She always took note of it. Like every other time she had awoken in this bed, she couldn't help but focus her gaze on the tiny black-red splotch which had been there for ages. the long-dead remains of a fly which had been there since before she moved into this room. Her roommate had said once it was there when she got here too, and Ice had been convinced ever since that this dead fly would outlast every student in the academy. The girl sat up groggily, rubbing her eyes.
Jana?
A low, feminine voice came from the bathroom, accompanied by the sound of the shower doors sliding open, then shutting with a thud.
Yeah?
What time is it?
Check your phone, Miss Cream.
The girl reached out to the side, groping for the device resting on her nightstand, checking the time to see 7:30 a.m.
Jana.
Her roommate stepped out from the bathroom, a big, fluffy towel wrapped around her muscular body and a smaller one entwined with her hair. Jana Tarmac was, by all accounts, Amazonian, at least a head taller than the majority of people at the academy and rivaling some of its most experienced fighters in strength and combat prowess, despite only being a student in her second year.
What?
Why didn't you wake me up? Ugh.
The younger girl groaned, falling back down onto her pillow with a whump.
I thought you hated me waking up in the morning, Ice.
Jana responded, sauntering over to her side. An unseen line in the room split it in two, though it was easily told apart as Jana's side of the room was perfectly organized, tidy, and clean, whereas Ice's side looked like a fallout shelter 4 months after the bombs had gone off and the morale of survivors had reached an all-time low, complete with the emptied rations. Namely, a slew of energy drinks stacked up in the corner.
I hate you waking me up at 5 a.m. on a Saturday. Fuck. I'm gonna be late again.
Jana looked over with a smirk.
You don't look like you're in much of a hurry there.
Ice waved her hand dismissively, making no effort to get out of bed.
If I'm gonna be late, I might as well just skip the first lecture. Carp hates people barging in on his classes anyway.
Jana shrugged, taking hold of the blow dryer set on her desk next to a neatly arranged stack of textbooks, a compact toolkit, and a framed photo of her and an older red-headed woman.
Suit yourself. Just be there for fitness class. You've got some slacking off to make up for, young lady.
The only response Ice gave was a groan, content with laying around in bed for just a little while longer. If there was any professor's lecture she wouldn't mind skipping, it was Karpatov's. When the first year stepped into the lecture hall that morning, for once, the first thing to draw their attention wasn't the imposing green-haired and red-eyed man at the front. What concerned them wasn't even the rumbling tarp set against the wall before him, the whiteboard moved aside to make room for it. No. What stood out most was that every single one of their desks bore a smaller tarp of the same material, low to the table, with something shivering underneath every other moment.
Whatever this is, I hate it already,
said one of the boys. He was a short but well-built guy who had, up until entering this room, carried himself with an air of aloof swagger, but any academy student knew better than to relax when Professor Karpatov was involved.
Remember when Jana told us we should mentally prepare for our first practical lesson, Helio?
I do. I believe I've prepared adequately, Rufus,
responded the taller, magenta-haired boy beside him. Helio Tarmac, Jana's younger brother, though the relation could only ever be given away by their similarly dark complexion and brilliant blue eyes. He and Rufus had known each other for some time and had, along with Ice, formed a band just a year before they came to the academy.
20 chimes says you're wrong.
I don't like gambling.
It is at this point that Karpatov's thunderous voice brought the class to attention.
Gawking can come later. Take your seats already.
The lot of them didn't have to be told twice, hurrying for their seats. Rufus in the back, seated with an even more relaxed-looking fellow named Timaeus, and Helio at the front, sharing his desk with a lithe-framed boy by the name of Reginald. The academy was an elite establishment. The competition for places was intense, and the classes were small. Theirs was no exception, with 8 in total and only 7 there that morning. Karpatov slowly peered over the students gathered before him, then cleared his throat.
As I said in your first lesson, even if some of you look down on the theoretical classes as being less useful, that is erroneous. If you don't know the theory, you will be torn apart in practice. This being especially true for monster biology. if you do not know what kills a monster, you will never be able to kill it. But I recognize that it is tedious to study a subject such as this in pure theory. That is why today I will make an exception.
Karpatov said, taking hold of the tarp at the front of the class.
Today, our lesson will be much more practical.
The moment the cloth was removed, the whole room grew still at the sight underneath. 2 pairs of stiff, twisted limbs terminating in bone-like hooks, bound to a wooden stand with straps of leather bolted tightly across their entire length, matted black fur across its form, covering all but its stump-like feet and barren scalp. Its eyes no more than pulsing red orbs set on either side of a sunken hole, which could be its mouth as much as it could have been its nose. The students seated at the front, save for Helio, reeled back as the beast let out a low-pitched moan, straining against its bindings, the wood creaking at its effort, but holding it still. Karpatov, unfazed, stepped in front of the creature and faced the class.
Lamia cerebrum. Brain vampire, as those before us decided to call it. It's not a creature you would find too commonly in this part of the world, but one you'd frequently find in the north. So frequently, in fact, that many consider them pack animals. But they are quite solitary. Or, in a sense at least.
Karpatov then reached his hand behind the creature's head and forced it down with a single rough motion, causing it to moan and struggle in its restraints in vain.
You see this spot on the top of its head?
Karpatov asked, knocking on it with a subdued thud.
This isn't just bone. It's made of the same stuff as its claws, and unless you've got a high-caliber anti-material rifle, I wouldn't suggest trying to get through it.
He then pulled back, letting the monster's head rest against the board behind it.
As such, my first recommendation is to always carry a high-caliber anti-material rifle, if possible. But my second recommendation...
In an instant, garnering an equally disturbed reaction as the monster's reveal had done, Karpatov jammed his palm through the creature's face. At first, one would have been excused to believe that he had merely stuck it through the opening in its head, but when one looked closer, it became apparent that the creature's flesh had been molded by his touch, its eyes pushed aside to make room for the incursion as the professor reached in almost up to his elbow.
That dome goes further down than you'd think at first. Your best bet is an attack through the front of the head, angled up from below it, so you'd want to get it on the ground or restrain it if possible. Because what you're aiming for is this.
With a sickening, suction-like sound and accompanied by the spillage of a viscous, clear liquid upon the floor, Karpatov retracted his hand. In it, he held what was most certainly the creature's brain, still attached by a stem which led through the hole carved by the professor's manipulation. Manipulations were, for a lack of better terms, special abilities which followed people throughout their lives. Their name referred to the distinct nature of these powers as they allowed one to manipulate specific aspects of the world around the manipulator according to their ability. Everyone had one, but not everyone was good with it.
This is how the creature has earned its name, or half of it at least. Destroying it is also the only means of killing a cerebrum. Those of you who know enough of common biology might now be fooled into believing this creature is unintelligent due to how smooth its brain appears. But, in a moment, you'll see that isn't quite the case. On your desks, you will find...
He rolled his wrist dismissively and huffed.
Just take off the covers.
The class did no such thing for a start, glancing between each other to see who would be the first to make the move. To the relief of many, that person was Helio, casually removing the cover, lifting it up, folding it neatly, and setting it on the corner of his desk. His methodical movements helped to ease the class into the fact that what lay before each of them was a miniature version of what was set at the front of the hall. A small, matted thing, with sharp claws and talons, bulging eyes, and hole-like face, strapped to a wooden slab bolted to the desk.
Greedy,
commented Timaeus, picking up a scalpel set by the slab. It was hard to tell how he felt about the lesson, as the guy never took off his shades and remained fairly stoic otherwise. Rufus, meanwhile, wore his emotions on his sleeve, in this case, by pushing his chair back and lifting up his hands.
Whatever this asshole wants us to do, That's all you, bro.
After the students had gotten a good look at their specimens, Karpatov cleared his throat, juggling the brain from one hand to the other.
What I want you to do,
He said, pointing a finger to the hole in the creature's head.
is this. Cerebrums have no vital organs within their body except for the brain. So don't worry much about your approach. But don't think you can relax if you remove the head. You'll see why.
Helio reached for the scalpel, but Reginald grabbed hold of it first, hopping from his seat as he did. Being on the shorter side, the plum-haired boy was about the same height standing up as his seated coursemate.
We need to get into its head, right? Ha! Easy enough.
The boy remarked,
Please do not destroy the brain.
commented Helio.
I have no intention of it. I am more skilled with a blade than anyone here. Observe!
Moments later, an incision in the creature's throat had covered the boy's face and shirt in a dark, half-transparent ooze, which seemed to relentlessly spurt forth from within its body.
You didn't say...
The boy glared at Karpatov.
I thought you said it had no vital organs!
Yes, the goo is not vital. It is, however, hard to get out of your hair. Don't lean that close to the specimen.
In the back, Timaeus lowered his scalpel to the creature's neck. After a moment's consideration, he leaned back and away from it before making contact with the flesh. The cut was smooth and resulted in a far less violent torrent of its ichor, which would have been great if the head then didn't roll off the slab and off the desk, falling to the floor with a splat and a pitiful moan from the creature's maw.
Very greedy,
commented Timaeus as Rufus sighed and crouched down to look for it.
Ha! Smooth moves, hotshot. Next time, try. Gah!
Rufus was cut short and bumped his head against the desk as he hopped back on his feet, waving around his arm as the creature's disembodied head had firmly latched onto his index finger.
I did warn you.
Said Karpatov with a shrug.
At least the head is the far less dangerous part. Cerebrums, as you may have noticed, have no teeth. They use their extremities to make lacerations in order to feed.
While the boys struggled, the third group seemed to have a much easier time of it. Since Ice was absent, 3 girls had come together. A seafoam-haired girl who was dressed something akin to a gothic nun, habit and all, save for her ensemble being more dirt and copper in color. A short, spunky, cyan-haired girl, eagerly peering around the others' waists, and a tall, well-composed, bespectacled girl with the scalpel in her hands.
If we can't get through the skull, we can just cut across its head without worrying we'll hit the brain,
she said, making just such an incision in the squirming creature.
Ow. That's kinda nasty. This thing can't feel pain, can it?
Asked the girl, still hiding behind the nun.
Probably not.
She side-eyed the scalpel-wielding girl.
Right, Maria?
The girl with the scalpel nodded.
That'd be correct. Cerebrums don't feel pain unless you harm their brains. Though, worrying about monsters' well-being is the last thing you should do, Asayui,
said Maria, directing the last remark at the girl still cowering behind her friend.
I'm not. Promise. It's just, I don't want to be cruel without reason. Because
if we do that, we're no better than the monsters themselves.
Actually, it just makes me feel kind of bad.
Which is the more reasonable opinion?
Chimed in Karpatov as he approached their desk. He looked at the nun girl with a shrug.
While a Bravo certainly has an image to worry about, Miss Vitola, some people will consider you a monster just for the path you've chosen in the first place.
And what if it's more about how I see myself, sir?
Then you'll be troubled by your own path too.
Karpatov responded and turned to Maria. The girl had opened the creature's head wide and now extracted its brain with a gloved hand. Over at the other desks, Helio had observed her and accomplished the same, while the boys in the back were trying to hide the fact that Timaeus had carved a little too deep and their subject now laid totally limp.
As you can see,
spoke Karpatov as he walked back to the front of the class.
Removing the brain doesn't kill the creature, even so much as sever the connection between the brain and the body. Though the exact mechanisms of how these creatures function internally are poorly understood, we know quite a lot about their general nature.
Karpatov then stepped back up to the beast at the front, taking hold of its brain once more, as though he was handling a slab of meat at the butcher's.
The smaller creatures before you are not smaller versions or children of grown cerebrums, as some erroneously believe. And despite the apparent structure of their brains, they're far from unintelligent. You see.
He then made the class jump again as he jammed 2 fingers into the brain tissue. The larger body convulsed at the front, but more disturbingly, so did the smaller creatures, even the one decapitated by Timaeus, though it had gone limp moments before.
The cerebrum is a hive mind. These are all essentially one beast. The reason these creatures are as solitary as they are is that the alphas often interfere with each other's connections to their smaller parts. Nasty, territorial things, these.
With little further warning, Karpatov split the creature's brain in half with his bare hands, and in an instant the beasts went still. The halves held by Karpatov, the brain on Maria's desk, and the one still in Helio's hand all started to shrivel and fall apart, making the latter set it gently down. Karpatov nodded, more to himself than anyone in class.
If you intend to make good money as a Bravo, mind you can always keep a brain intact and sell it to the highest bidders. Just make sure to burn the body of the alpha. The smaller beasts will flock to it, and you can deal with them too. And having a vacant cerebrum brain is a good way to ward off others.
Finally, he tossed down the half-brains and clapped his hands together.
Class dismissed! Go do whatever it is you do.
The class, muttering amongst themselves, collected their things and headed for the exit. Many were eager to take a shower as soon as possible, most of all Reginald. Helio looked at Rufus when they reached the door.
I would like those 20 chimes now.
You said you didn't like gambling.
Yes, but I do like winning.